Hello, my name is Mark and I thank you so much for coming by today. As you can tell from the video title, we are going to talk about the art of EtchrLab, specifically with their watercolor sketchbooks, their watercolor blocks, and their watercolor paper, which I absolutely have come to love. It is 100%, this book here is an A5 watercolor sketchbook. It is 100% cotton paper, cold press, and I just love this stuff. It's very thirsty paper and it picks up water really easily. So the way I work and the amount of watercolor that I apply, it really works well for me. So I really enjoy these. Now, I originally received a couple of these books from my friend Nan Schifris, who introduced me to these books a few years ago, and she really recommended that I try them and she thought I'd love them. So she sent me this A4 sketchbook and she sent me the A5 as well. These are both cold press watercolor paper, 100% cotton paper. And again, I just absolutely love these books. Now, when I first opened up the A4 book, I don't know if it was me or if it was the book itself, and maybe the glue wasn't strong enough, but you can see here that the cover, the binding, snapped away from the actual pad of paper in the book. And it was very disappointing for me because it was brand new and I had just opened it. I don't know if the glue wasn't strong enough or if I just put way too much pressure on it, but it kind of snapped away. The book held together just fine, and it still holds together just fine. You can see the stitching, the white stitching that holds it together. That's just fine. So I love this book, no problems, but they are expensive sketchbooks. So when that originally happened, I was kind of disappointed. So, but in the end, it was not a big deal. The sketchbook itself works just fine. So you can feel the paper. It has got a really nice texture to it. It's cold press. So it's not like some of the cheaper brands which have a really rough texture. This has a really nice texture. It works easily for me and the style that I work in, and I really love the book itself. I love the canvas cover. I love the logo that's embossed on it. Really well done. So I've had a couple of their cold press sketchbooks since the ones that Nan gave me, but I never had a hot press version of the book. So I went out and I bought one, and I'm opening it up here for the first time, and I just want to show you. It's a great looking book. It's consistent with all their other sketchbooks and so forth. I haven't actually opened up the plastic yet and tried it, so I can't wait to get into that and try that hot press sketchbook. This is the Etchr satchel, which they sent to me quite a while ago, and I wasn't sure if I was going to like it, but this thing is an absolute monster. It is a fully customizable artist's carrying case, and you can customize it in a million different ways. So you might want to check that out if you're interested. My favorite is their field case here, which I turned from my pens and pencils into my brush holder. This thing goes everywhere with me and keeps my brushes protected. I love that case. It is so durable. It is awesome. Now, these are their watercolor blocks and pads. The co-founder, we were talking about a few months ago, I guess, and Simon Frisbee, he's the co-founder of the organization, said that he thought I might like to try the watercolor blocks, especially the hot press, because I'm such a cold press fan when it comes to these sketchbooks. I normally like hot press paper, so he thought I'd really enjoy these. So he generously sent out a couple of these watercolor blocks for me to try out, and I'm really grateful. So Simon, if you're watching, thank you for these. And you know, I don't promote products that I don't use myself, so nobody's paying me to do this video. Simon was generous enough to send these blocks to me, so I'm doing the video because I use these products, and I think if I'm going to use it, I want to share something that I use real world with people who might find it useful for themselves too. Now, these blocks are interesting because they're tiny. They're very small. And you can see here up in the corner, that's the access point to cut the paper out of the block. The rest of it is sealed all the way around. So I use much larger blocks like Arches or Legion, and I love using the larger size. So this was going to be a challenge for me to use a smaller block, and I've never tried it before. Now, this is a cold press block. Now, the other one that you saw, the hot press one, that is a wood pulp book. Now, it's 100% wood pulp. This book is 50% cotton. Now, the Etchr sketchbooks that I showed you before are 100% cotton. So what does 50% cotton mean? That means it's made with 50% cotton fibers and 50% something else. It could be recycled cotton, could be recycled wood pulp, it could be cotton linters, it could be anything. They don't really say what the other 50% is, so I at least know that there's 50% cotton in this cold press watercolor block. Now the wood pulp, that just means it's a wood pulp paper, which means that it's got shorter fibers, it's a choppier feel to the texture of the paper. They work fine, and most sketchbooks or most watercolor papers that you use actually are wood pulp. And the good thing about wood pulp is that the acidic component to it is removed. So there's very little yellowing and aging to these and discoloration. So when you paint a painting or you do a drawing on this kind of paper, it's not going to yellow out on you after a while. Some of the acid-free sketchbooks that I've used, just the generic ones you get at the art store, over time you'll see that they yellow out. And it is really frustrating to have a drawing that you did 20 years ago and you open up your sketchbook and it's yellow. And the ink that you drew on has bled right through to a drawing on the other side of the page. So back to this this wood block, the watercolor block. What I'm doing here is, this is not a size I'm usually comfortable with, by the way. This is a size that's very small for me, and I don't usually like to draw in this size. So I'm using a lot bigger watercolor blocks. So to come to this side, it was a little tricky, but you know what? As soon as I taped it off and I started drawing in it, I'm using a Copic multiliner disposable pen here. The ink is great for this kind of a watercolor painting. But as soon as I started working on it, I said, you know, this is really kind of neat. It's nice to work in this size. I have to work a lot tighter. I have to be careful of, you know, just how I'm working with this, because I know I can make mistakes easily if I'm not careful. So right from the get-go, I laid down the first color and I could feel the water just sink right into the paper. So this wood pulp is really nice. It's not as absorbent as a 100% cotton paper, which soaks it up immediately, but I really like how the watercolor goes right into this paper, and I can still work with it. It stays wet for a little bit longer than, say, a cotton paper, but I like that I can work with it. And it's giving me exactly the expectations I want from the way I work and from the perspective that I work in. Simon, the co-founder of Etchr, he was right on when he said he thought I'd like the hot press version of it, because this is a hot press version and this is what I'm used to. I like hot press paper. I don't know why, I just do. The smoother texture of the paper is how I like to work, and this is working really well for me. You can see here you can glaze on this and it holds up, and the colors can become really vibrant and nice, and I really like the way this works. Now, what this is I'm painting a thank you card. I can see myself using these blocks not for sketching, not for doodling, but for finished pieces. I want to create a piece that I can do something with. And so for this painting here, and for the next one that I'll do on the other block, I'm just making thank you cards, because I think this will be a really fun thing to send out to somebody as a thank you. It's a great size, and I have envelopes just for this size, so it'll be a nice treat for somebody that has been nice to me and deserves a thank you, for me to send this along and say, hey, thank you for whatever whatever it is you did for me. And I know how it feels when I get a handmade card. It's a really good feeling, and I hope somebody will appreciate this. But boy, this is a really nice treat to paint on, because a lot of the sketchbooks and things that I buy, especially like the cheaper ones from, you know, your Michaels or, you know, your art stores, the cheaper ones always let me down. I look at them and it's like, oh, buy one, get one free. And I think, oh, this will be great. But they're usually just cheaper recycled fiber papers that don't hold their weight. And it's, I don't know, I've given up spending money on cheap products. I want quality, not quantity. So I don't need 2 large sketchbooks of cheap paper. I want one sketchbook of really nice paper, and I'll pay the extra money for it. And these products by EtchrLab, they're not cheap products. They're made for people who really take their art either seriously or take their hobby as something that they want to spend time with, and they don't want just something that's just not going to work for them. So moving on to the next block, this is the 50% cotton paper. So again, I'm not sure what the other 50% is. I'm just guessing it's recycled fibers. But this is a cold press paper, so I wasn't sure what to expect. Now it's 50% cotton, so that means it's going to be half as absorbent as 100% cotton paper. Makes sense, right? So okay, so I'm painting on this, and I could tell right away from when I'm painting on it that the water and the watercolor that I'm painting down stays wet a lot longer. And at first I was kind of like, okay, that's not what I like. That's not the way I like to work. But as I worked with it a little bit, I realized I kind of like the fact that it stays wet longer. It allows me the flexibility to do more with that wash. I can add a little bit more effect to it. I can add a little bit more color or glazing to it. And you can see here on this right side of the piece, I'm painting in this greenish brown color here. And as I'm painting it, I'm realizing, oh, it's staying wet a lot longer than I want it to. But that's kind of cool because I can get this sort of light granulation effect if I add in another color here. And it stays wet and it goes right in there. And it's a really cool effect. So this paper has a unique ability to do different things than the other hot press, the 100% wood pulp piece does. So that's really exciting for me. And again, the size is really kind of fun to work with. It's quick. These paintings probably took me about an hour or so, and I had a lot of fun working with these papers. So again, I'm really grateful that Simon sent these out to me and asked me if I'd like to try them. That's why I'm doing the review of this, is because, you know, if you want to go and buy other papers, if you want to go buy Arches or you want to buy Fabriano, that's your choice. But this is an option that I think is worth mentioning because these papers are really nice. They're accessible too. You can get these available in different places. I know Jackson stores in, I think it's Europe or something, they're selling them now in their stores. And you can get these on Amazon and you can get them direct from the company. So it's an accessible brand, which I really like. And they have so many different products in their arsenal now. They have watercolors, they have watercolor palettes, they have sketchbooks, wood blocks, the watercolor blocks. They have all kinds of stuff now, especially their gear too. The art satchel, the carrying case, the field case that I mentioned before. There's a lot of stuff to be excited about this brand. And the thing I love about it, and this is what Simon was saying in an interview I was reading about, just that, you know, they wanted to create products that artists kind of had feedback on. And, you know, if I want this in my product, I need somebody to make it. And this company is taking that leap to say, you know, we're going to design things a little differently. We're going to make things a little differently. And we're going to do it in a way that is for the artist. So they're taking artist feedback and they're creating products based on the needs of the artist and the desires of the artist. There's not a lot of companies that do that. Some of these third-party vendors out there, I know Arteza and things like that, they're creating some products that people really love and they really enjoy using them, but they're not unique to the market. There's nothing unique about, you know, watercolor paints or gouache or brushes or whatever. There's a ton of companies making that kind of stuff out there. But when somebody or some company or the people of that company really believe in what they're promoting and what they're creating and manufacturing, it's going to be expensive, but it's going to be really good quality. And that's what I've found in these products. The Etchr satchel, like I said, it's a monster. And that thing, I can customize it for a million different things. I can go out and use it as an easel. I can just carry it, you know, carry my stuff in it. There's a million ways to use that thing. And so that is a great product. The field case, like I said, I use it for my brushes, but I've seen other people use it with a little sketchbook inside and a bunch of pens or pencils or even brushes, whatever. You could throw a bunch of watercolor pencils in there and put one of these little pads with it, and you're good to go. And that's the thing about these watercolor blocks, is that I can see myself taking these on vacation, just on the road, throwing in a couple of watercolor pencils in a bag or a satchel, and going out and just, you know, if I'm staying overnight somewhere, if I'm going to visit my family in the city, whatever I'm going to do, if I'm in a hotel room, these are perfect because they don't take up too much space. I can just do it on the fly. I can even see myself using these on an airplane. I don't know, whatever. But anyway, here you can see I'm using a palette knife because I've learned with with watercolor blocks, it's good to use a palette knife because it's clean and it's not going to damage the other piece under it. But you can see these pads have access points where you can use that palette knife to cut the paper away. If you've never used a watercolor block, then you have to cut the paper away one sheet at a time. My first watercolor block, I had no idea how to get the paper out, and it was really I was really frustrated until I figured out, oh, I can just use a palette knife. So that's how I can cut these sheets away. So overall, what do I think of these two products? I really like these. I highly recommend, if you've got the money and you're interested in this kind of a product, check it out. It's worth checking out. They're accessible, they're affordable, and they're great products. Etchr has been good to me, and the products have been something I've been using all the time. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please put them down below in the comments. If you haven't subscribed, please do. I'll bring you more content like this in the future. I hope your creative journey is going great. And as always, thank you and God bless.